Good afternoon. I'm Zach Bernard of TV10 News.
And I'm Lindsay Harrison, and we're here today to bring you something a little different.
Kind of a showcase of some of the things that our classmates have produced over the last year.
We had the happy problem of having too much good stuff to air during our regular newscast, so we extended our semester by one more day.
Our first story comes from TV10's Connor Quealy, who looks back at some of the disasters that happened on our campus and eyes towards what's being done here at Illinois State.
Images like these seem to grace our television screens just about every day. Shootings on campuses from Santa Monica to Purdue University. Here at Illinois State, we can rest assured knowing that we're in good hands if such a tragedy ever struck our campus.
I've done many of these over the years around the country, and I've gotten pretty good at balancing the need for a little bit of emotion in a situation, tempered with the need to actually respond and coordinate, because they're looking to you to do this job.
Eric Hodges took the role of emergency manager at ISU just 8 months ago, but at this point he knows the role front and back.
The bomb threats were busy. The storms on November 17th were just an afternoon of response, and then the winter weather events, which is primarily the pipe bursts for us, the water pipe bursts, were incremental. So they'd happen a couple hours here, a few minutes there. They were spread out.
Hodges says the bomb threats earlier this school year happened just a few weeks into his new role. Even though he was new to the job, he sprung into action to make sure the campus response went as smoothly as possible.
The decision was made to do the operation that we did, which was a bag check operation for 3 days. My primary responsibility was logistics at that point. How do we make that happen? How do we get tables and chairs outside? How do we get tents and awnings? How do we get water? Especially that second one ended up being one of the hottest days of the year.
And that logistical role is something he constantly prepares for.
Coordination is a piece of it, but logistics is typically the #1 role.
But even with the preparation, there's one response he hopes to never make.
An active shooter situation is the one incident we all hope doesn't happen in a university setting.
If there ever was an active gunman on campus, ISU police would take the tactical role, but Hodges says his role is equally as important.
That is the impetus for me then to activate the Emergency Operations Center and bring the team together to support the police department that's on scene. So we provide them their support. They're doing the tactics, and we're providing the support to them.
Hodges says his role in an emergency situation is clear, but he has a second one as well, preparing the campus for an event where he's needed. And that's why he pushes the campus to sign up for emergency alerts.
And that's a message we push out often and in many different channels. We especially hit the incoming freshman class when they're on campus registering, and then we do it through other promotional campaigns and our biannual test of the ISU Emergency Alert.
And that was Connor Quealy reporting for TV10 News.
Now, we had a terrible winter in the Midwest with the phrase polar vortex becoming common in any event of a bad storm.
Unfortunately, one ISU student fell victim to the awful conditions in early February.
TV10's Allie Lammers took a look at what that meant for the campus.
The polar vortex brought bone-chilling temperatures this winter, as well as a tragedy on the campus of Illinois State University. 19-year-old Yusuf Saeda, known to most as Yoshi, was found dead in a field near Susan and Jumer Drives in Bloomington earlier this year. Yoshi was a member of Delta Chi fraternity and was attending a sorority event the night he passed away.
He was a great friend, and he's definitely missed by everybody.
Michael Zajac, director of fraternity and sorority life at ISU, said his initial reaction was shock, especially considering the amount of alcohol-related programs that are required for members of the Greek community.
Our job is to try to be as proactive as possible, provide them the information, the resources, the tools to be smart about any kind of use as it relates to alcohol, and making sure that they can be placing themselves in situations that don't put them in negative situations.
He is remembered by his brothers as a good friend and a great brother.
We hung out every day last year, and it was definitely very personal between us.
That's one of the things about being in a fraternity or sorority that I think is different and than being in a registered student organization. I think being in a fraternity and sorority adds that additional depth of brotherhood and sisterhood.
But are programs like Greek 101 and alcohol awareness classes enough to make students really consider how much alcohol they consume?
Everyone thinks won't happen to me, but now we all know firsthand that it can and it will.
For some students, it may never sink in, but a tragedy like this might just be enough to make you change your ways. The men of Delta Chi plan to honor their brother in some way,
We considered doing a scholarship in his name, as well as maybe a fundraiser.
but haven't finalized any plans just yet. Reporting for TV10 News, I'm Allie Lammers.
Now, one of the more tragic news stories that we saw throughout this year in Central Illinois was the death of Michael Collins. Michael Collins was struck by a drunk driver at the corner of Empire and Main Streets back in late March, and he passed away 5 days later on April 3rd. Collins has been the inspiration behind the MC Strong campaign, which worked its way through Central Illinois. And later today, Illinois Secretary of State Jesse White will be meeting with ISU President Larry Dietz in the old main room of the Bone Student Center to honor the memory of Michael Collins.
President Larry Dietz. That's not what we were expecting to hear when we came to the end of this year. As we all know, President Bowman retired at the end of last school year, and the board hired former President Timothy Flanagan to take over from there. It was a quiet first semester from Flanagan, but that all changed late February. A former grounds worker filed a police report claiming Flanagan assaulted him. Flanagan resigned in March, and the Board of Trustees named former Vice President of Student Affairs Larry Dietz as ISU's 19th president. So far, the students' response to President Dietz has been positive, to say the least.
Now, people who eat in campus dining centers are seeing a bit of changes this year.
It's because of the greater awareness of gluten-free allergies in food.
TV10's Liz Rill decided to dig deeper into gluten and its effects on those who have the allergy.
You may have seen increasingly larger gluten-free sections at your local grocery store and wondered, why is that? You may also be thinking, what even is gluten and why is it important? Well, gluten is a protein found in barley, wheat, and rye, and it basically keeps bread items sticky and delicious. But for people with celiac disease, this protein can cause serious damage to the intestine.
So what happens is by consuming that gluten's seen as a foreign invader. So their immune system goes berserk and goes crazy and starts attacking this gluten in their small intestine, and that causes a lot of malabsorption.
Now, every 1 in 133 have celiac disease, and 50 years ago, gluten intolerance was almost never heard of. There could be many reasons for this, such as our genetic makeup, our environment changing, or even the consumption of genetically modified foods. The book Wheat Belly makes a provocative claim that these modifications to gluten and wheat over time are now taking its toll on our bodies.
As time's gone on and there's been agricultural demands to grow more wheat in a smaller amount of space and with, a higher yield, that we've now changed wheat to be something that the human body can't recognize.
I asked an ISU student who suffers with celiac disease if she thinks that this theory has validity.
Definitely. I mean, just think of, years ago people had never heard of celiac disease and you really didn't have a problem with it. Over the years, people are trying to make things, look better and taste better when really, organic food is kind of ugly, but it's good for you.
There has recently been a lot of research on GMOs and gluten sensitivity. Aria Drexler briefly explains this research and just how GMOs and our health interact.
The gluten molecule, when it has been genetically modified, is reacting differently in our gut than the gluten we saw 50 years ago. And that can actually have an impact on our gut bacteria. And the gut bacteria, that's where about 70% of our immune system is found. So when you're messing with that, you really start to get more of these autoimmune diseases, the gluten sensitivity.
Wheat Belly proposes just one of the many theories of the origin of celiac disease. But much more scientific research is needed before this theory can become a scientific explanation. For TV10 News, I'm Liz Rill.
Now, when we come back, we'll take a look at one student teacher at Illinois State that's trying to make a difference.
And what happens when a pizza place brings in a camera crew? You'll find out when TV10 returns.